Hi there, students. Talk is cheap. Okay, this means that it's easy to say what you're going to do, but when it comes to doing it, that's a different question. So it's easy to say that you're going to take this course of action. It's easy to say what the correct course of action is, but it's much harder to put those words into action. And this phrase, talk is cheap, well, they say talk is cheap, actions are valuable. Talk is cheap, actions speak louder. Talk is cheap, action is priceless. So it's easy to say things, but what really counts is when you actually do things. So talk is cheap. It's easy to make boastful, unrealistic statements which are not backed up by your action. Yeah, if you go to the pub on a Saturday night and people are talking and they do this and that, but it's easy to talk, it's easy to say things, but it's much harder to actually to do them. So if somebody says something and you say to them, talk is cheap, you're saying that you don't believe them, you don't think they're actually going to do this. It means that words alone are not enough. You need to prove them. Put your money where your mouth is. So talk is cheap. It costs nothing to speak, but to do, is much harder. So talk is cheap. It doesn't cost you anything to say what you're going to do, but actually doing it is a very different question. Talk is cheap. It says that people say many things and they make many claims and they make many promises, but the actual truth of the matter is a little more complicated. It's not what you always see. So talk is cheap. It's easy to boast, to make unrealistic statements, but very often these are not supported by the actions that you do or evidence. This is fine words, butter no parsnips, or money talks, or put your money where your mouth is. Talk the talk and walk the walk. Actually do what you're going to say. So talk is cheap. It's easy to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But when it comes to actually doing it, then that's a different question. Prove your action with your words. So in this phrase, you're using this phrase, talk is cheap, is calling somebody's bluff, is saying, okay, you've said it, now let's see you do it. Let's actually see some action from you rather than just talking about it, because it's easy to talk about ideas, but it's actually hard to put plans into action. It's easier to say something than to do it. What we ought to do about this is the following. But talk is cheap. It's easy to sit in the pub and say, we ought to do this, we ought to do that, the best thing to do is this, the best thing to do is that. But at the end of the day, it's much harder to actually put these things like this into practice. So I guess if talk is cheap, then being silent is expensive. And it seems that there are a lot of people who can't afford to buy into the idea that being silent is the more expensive way. Okay, so talk is cheap. It's easy to say things, but it's much harder to actually put them into practice. Formality. I think I'm going to give this a 4.5 informality. Used in an informal conversation, semi-formal conversation, semi-formal writing, but I think I would stop there. I wouldn't use it in something very formal. And then the origin, cheap means has no expense. It's giving the idea that it's easy to say things, yeah. And well, as we know, actions speak louder than words, because yeah, people say things, but when they actually do them, that's another question. If you enjoyed the video, give it a rating. Talk is cheap. Do it. Subscribe to my channel, and I will see you soon. Bye for now. Talk is cheap.